Hello and welcome. My name is Cameron Bazin. I'm the Artistic Director of the Miami Dance Hub. Our guest today is Brigid Baker, founder and director of the 6th Street Dance Studio in Miami. It is one of the many, many roles that she carries in the dance world. Brigid is a huge dance presence, and we are delighted to speak with her about her life, her passions, and certainly as much as possible, about dance. So welcome, Brigid. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Cameron. I really appreciate it. It's a beautiful day.
It is a beautiful day. So you are an iconic presence in Miami. Everyone knows who you are.
A little scary.
And you're all over the place, but you've chosen to make your home and to have your studio here in Little Havana. Is there a reason why you chose this place and this culture?
Sometimes I think Little Havana chose me. I love it because it's real people, and coming from New York and family, neighborhood is really, really important. My friend had the studio previous to me, and I came here to teach at it, and that fell in love with the neighborhood like that. And I have a long history in my family of social activism and preservation, especially. And it's just real people, the food, the conversation, music coming out of the windows, normal people on the street, a lot of social engagement, and I just love it. Also, I lived on 155th and Riverside for a long time in New York, which is a whole Latin neighborhood, so it was
So familiar.
Very comfortable to me, yeah.
I know when you first started the school here, you did a lot of activism in the community, and you were very beneficial to engage young people in dance.
Well, it was never an intention, really. I'm a choreographer, contemporary choreographer, and I came to just have a space to work on my thing and to give classes. That was basically it. But always you have to sort of tune in to what is there and what the needs are. So basically I had a scholarship student who said to me, you really should have hip hop here. And I said, no, I'm not interested. Not because I don't have a love of hip hop. On the contrary, I was very connected with the New York scene of hip hop. Of course, when you look at me, it's not exactly what springs to mind, but and I had not liked or didn't know, went in a different direction that was more commercial, etc. So I said, no. And she said, no, they're really good. And so I said, okay. I thought it'd be good for her. I said, you set it up and you sign them in, and only the best teachers. That's all I want. That's all I ask for. So, okay. So they arrived and the music was going, a lot of different people coming in. And I came out in the middle of class just to see how it was going, and I was bowled over by the talent level. I was just floored. Oh, wow. I went back into my office and I thought, what am I going to do? I have to do something about this. So I dedicated a huge part of my life then to the urban landscape here, and not just here, but in multiple cities. And the Zulu Nation came, who are the originators of hip hop.
Wow. And
I started a program, a free program for children, which I ran for 17 years.
Oh my goodness, I didn't even know this side of you. My goodness, more and more things happen.
It's crazy. So the original tenets of hip hop, peace, love, unity, having fun, and right living, which are the original tenets of hip hop. And we worked with the Zulu Nation, with the children. And I had everyone here, all the whackers, the female breakers had nowhere to go. They were here. The male break dancers, the legit video dancers, and everybody was here.
So you probably started the Miami movement, really, in a way that started right here.
I collectivized it, and also it integrated Little Havana, because there weren't, there's Afro-Cubans, which also it's a part of my extended family as well. My nieces are Afro-Cuban, but there's Afro-Cuban here, but not Southern Black per se. And so that was the first time that it really integrated the whole neighborhood, and because you get drinks in the bodega across the street and coffee on the corner, so eventually it becomes your neighborhood as well.
So it kind of goes back to the whole reason that you want to be here is because of all of those things,
right,
I guess.
Right. And then, spread it out into Detroit, in the jitters in Detroit. It started to name my mission, a big part of my mission, and that was to protect vernacular work, any work that came from the people. So now it's Afro-Cuban and rumba and salsa. Marisol Blanco has her company and her classes here, and so anything that comes from the people, I will protect.
I know you've developed your own teaching methods that is called light body. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how it got started and what you bring to your students or what you want your students to get from it, I guess,
Right,
too?
right. As I say, well, my background is really varied, and so the hip hop part of it came through bands that I was in downtown New York and in the very early 80s. And after AIDS, and again, we'll talk later maybe about it, I had a huge awakening because everything in me changed, completely changed. And I left New York and moved to a mountain to find out what's happening to me. It was a real, excuse me, spiritual awakening. And I decided to rethink everything that I was doing. So I began to study with a lot of holistic practitioners there in every possible configuration, from rebirthing to craniosacral to all different workings of the body. So I was a breath worker. I've been a breath worker for about 30 years now, since that time. And which sort of goes, I've always been fascinated by it because I was a singer, and I also had a sister with a terminal illness that involved the lungs. So breath was something, you see how your history kind of guides you where you need to be. So it really fascinated me. So when I came to Miami, I had already was developing this different way of approaching a holistic approach to the body that was a preliminary thing to any kind of movement you might like to do, or just living. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Then when I began teaching ballet here, there had been a big break between my mountain work, where I worked alone, and coming back to New York and then arriving in Miami. I hadn't really looked at students in a long time. So when I began teaching ballet, I was like, there's so many missing links.
Oh, wow.
I was like, oh, that seems to be missing from the training, or this seems to be missing. And I thought, that can't be. So it seemed to me there was a whole layer of artistry in physical movement that was missing. And no matter what kind of correcting I would do on individual steps, it was not getting to the bottom of it. So the work, all this holistic work I had been doing, then I began to make a full bedrock of a pedagogy for it in order to almost make a clean slate and start again, and with these people who come with these gifts to be movement artists, and give them this real basis so that when they go into whatever technical language they're pursuing, they have a sense of it. So it deals with integrating the right and left hemisphere of the brain so that the artistic nature comes first, and then the mechanics of it comes second. So you have to do there's a whole series of things that you do, rhythmic breathing and tapping and moving, that does that integration, and also it reorganizes the nervous system, allows it to be more orchestrated. Now, I mean, if you can feel more, you can direct more. You have a greater language and facility.
They move so beautifully. I mean, not just technique-wise, but there's something, another level of technique that they move. And you can see them, they have a little bit of a freedom or something. They're just lovely dancers to watch. And I haven't been in your class, I haven't seen it, but I see the results.
Very, very rigorous as well, but in the end, they don't fatigue. They can dance, I mean, if you've seen Remain in Light or something, they'll dance for an hour and not fatigue, and they're not red-faced. There's no footfall sound from jumping. Eventually people begin to see this thing, and it's strictly a result of that preliminary training. And some of the young people, like that scholarship girl who was a hip-hop dancer, she studied it as well, and it can enter any field that you're working in.
So great.
And now since the pandemic, we've extended it into 2 different types of fascial work. So it's even crazier and more, it's in a whole other arena now, so it's kind of great.
So you're layers upon layers upon layers, obviously. Let's go back and talk about your New York days, like how you got into the dance world, and how did you start? How did it all start with you?
Okay, that's pretty insane.
That's a big conversation, probably.
I'm going to try to like. So my parents are New York people, and but when my mother, they married, and my mother said, "Buddy," but she called my father. You know, if we're going to have babies, we're going to move out of the city. So they moved up to a little place in upstate New York, near Saratoga, as it would have it. In order to have this family. My mother was, it's important to tell sort of this background, that way you get why I do the number of things I do. My mother was, before World War II, she received a scholarship as a painter, but the war stopped that. But she was really gifted in all of the fine arts, and her ability to make, to fix, to sew, to crochet, to knit.
Maybe that's where you got that.
That is where I got it from. And she could not just create artistic things, but she was extremely mechanical, and she rigged a lot of things. It's important to know my family is huge. We're 7 children and a great aunt who lived with us, so there were 10 of us in the house, and very poor, but very sophisticated. My father was a singer. He actually sang with the big bands and had a radio show, and he was a writer, but he was also an extraordinary social activist who ran for public office, like during the Kennedy, all of that time I was on this campaign trail. It was just like crazy. So I come from a long line of musicians and fine artists, it's sort of split between.
That says a lot about you, like your parents, because it does speak a little bit to who you have become in your life.
Yeah, without a doubt. And also I wasn't fulfilled doing a single just a single occupation, which is not something that's encouraged, but I'll know it now when I see it and encourage it with people, you know. So I started as a musician, and a serious musician.
What did you play?
I was a singer, but I also played oboe in an orchestra, and piano badly, but piano had to happen. And I came out of the womb wanting to dance, to do ballet. And I don't even know how I knew about it. I don't know how I knew about it, it's really mysterious. And we didn't have any money for that. So but still I would make dance, I'd make my brothers dance and put on these dances, and
you didn't even know how you got that. It was just innate to you.
In fact, I broke both these collarbones when I was 4, dancing on the table, ballet, on the kitchen table. I was trying to get off before my mother came in. I fell off the table. So it was something, I don't know, reincarnation. I don't know what it was. But I do remember first seeing ballet and at Saratoga. So I was really lucky because Saratoga was right there. And I saw Nutcracker. I was not wildly impressed. I thought it was very good. But the very next thing I saw were the Balanchine black and white ballets, and I was maybe 6, and I thought to myself, he knows what he's doing. This is very good.
You were at 6 years old. You were
yes.
rather judgmental.
Completely,
right then,
completely judgmental. I knew, and I'm not exaggerating. I really knew, and I was really level-headed about it. But nonetheless, I couldn't study, and my sister, as I say, my sister was terminally ill. So it was extremely strong situation, and I knew my parents were amazing, and I knew not to ask because they would have given me anything, and I knew don't ask. But I would pray to God at night, please let me dance, please let me dance. And I made a deal with God that I never broke. I said, if you let me dance, I'll never lose interest, and I never have. So, crazy story. I was older. I don't know if I was 13 maybe, 12 or 13, 12 maybe. We did local theater. My father did theater. I sang. I was singing everywhere, and classically. It was a big deal. And I did a piece of choreography in something, and some woman saw it, a local person who had a dance thing, and she brought me into this. She had been a dancer with Liberace in Vegas. But she was amazing. Long story longer because the story gets really crazy. Saratoga is the summer home of New York City Ballet.
Right.
And Melissa Hayden, at that time, she was still in the company, and I guess it was the year they had done Cortège en Croix because that was her final year. So at any rate, Kirsten and Balanchine, they had decided that they wanted to create like this like little school, like a test school in Saratoga. So Melissa Hayden was gonna, because she was leaving, she was going to be one of the head people in it, but it wasn't just her. It was her and Oleg Fatum of the Royal Danish Ballet, so it was Bournonville, and Juan Anduze of the Puerto Rican National Company, and if you want to hold on to your hat. So at any rate, Melissa Hayden went all around New York State picking people to be in this thing, like 20 people. And I did not know my left foot from my right foot, but I knew, like I looked the part, always looked the part, and I knew how to dance. But I didn't know how to do anything or what
Never
anything
been
was.
taught.
Never.
Had no like technique, skill, or whatever.
No,
Yes.
nothing.
You knew movement.
None of the language, nothing. She took me in. But the sad thing was, instead of looking like someone who was amazing for never having done, I looked like an idiot, you know, because...
But you got to start somewhere.
Right. But it was like I could do enough to make me look as though I just didn't know what I was doing. So it was really pretty crazy. And so my first modern teacher there was Pina Bausch.
Wow, great.
Because she was she was a member of the Paul Sanasardo company, and Paul was a phenomenal teacher.
Yeah, you had kind of some heavy hitters right there.
It was it just went from one to the next to the next to the next. And my music teachers, which is a whole other story. I was like, how is this happening to me? One amazing artist to the next to the next to the next, in the most least likely possible way at all. So that kind of, okay, there's an instance that was very important. She was screaming out, "Assemblée, assemblée, assemblée," and I was like, what's an assemblée? So I remember my eyeballs darting from like dancer to dancer, trying to see what begins this. Is it the plie? Is it the jump? Do they come together? And in music, that's very different. You really know where the 0 point is, where is the beginning point to start anything. And in that moment, I vowed that I would know the beginning point to teach.
Oh, interesting. You're already thinking in a different way.
Already, yeah, because I was terrified, and all she did was yell at me. She just yelled at me the whole time. But I think she kind of loved me, but she just was, and I was like, bring it on. I'll just yell at me.
Ready.
I don't care. I'm going to just look like an idiot. That's all, great, fine with me. And, and I also, then I started in the off season working with Phyllis Marmine, who was somebody in Schenectady who was Merrill Ashley went to her, and another city ballet. I just lucked out. I lucked out.
So you ended up having some really, really good instructors.
Really heavy hitters, thank God, because I was a late starter, and but the music thing was essential, and no regrets there.
Probably a wonderful foundation. I mean, knowing music, you were already ahead.
Yeah, yeah.
And the discipline too. You already had that.
Plus, it's all I wanted. All I wanted. There was no problems there. You just couldn't stop me.
So what took you to New York? How did you get into the New York scene?
Someone told me that I should go to this school purchase. In the meantime, my sister died, which was devastating to me because we were impossibly close. And so there's a lot of things I don't remember really. And I was doing music and dance at the same time. And I was also worked in theater, but it's another story. I don't know really how I got to purchase. I know that I did not apply. That somehow I auditioned and I applied later. And when I went, and it was one of the formative years there, the beginning years, and it was a very, very special place then, very special. William Bales, who was a pioneer and an extraordinary man, he just saw me, and he said that creature.
Yeah, you got kind of picked out throughout your life.
I got picked out throughout my life and was always behind the 8 ball. So it taught me a lot about discipline and humility and what you love and how to align with it.
And was Purchase at that time, was it more modern or ballet or both?
Both. I mean, Ann Parsons then went from Joffrey to Purchase, so she was there, and Reyes Fernandez, who was he loved me, I loved him. He was an amazing man. Rosanna Saravalli, she was from American Ballet Theater. Bill Glassman from American Ballet Theater, also extraordinary. And then the modern department was to die for. It was, Carol Freed and Kazuko Urabayashi, who became my composition mentor, both from Graham, but I studied Cunningham with Mel Wang, who I ended up working with for 8 or 9 years. He was really a very important person to me. And also Limon I studied, but worked with Beatrice Seckler. I learned the original member of the Shakers, Maria Teresa from the original Isadorable, or from Isadora,
Is there anyone that you consider sort of the one that really influenced your life, or was or an experience that was sort of like this person taught me what I know, or a person or someone that was that person to you?
There's a lot of them. First of all, Mr. Bales, because I was really out of it after the death of my sister. So when I came back home after the audition and they said you have it, I didn't call them back. I didn't respond. So he called me several times. He called me himself.
He's really pushed.
He pushed me, and that saved my life. Really saved my life, because I was
took you into a whole other world and out
Yes.
of maybe the world that you were in.
Absolutely. So Mr. Bales for sure, and his integrity and intelligence. Kazuko, all the teachers at that time, but Kazuko Hirabayashi for her stellar capability in terms of composition, and Carol Freed for the heart of the drive of how to execute with passion. Man Royes for his seeing beyond my creatureism to see me as this like ballet person, He never thought I was any of that. And then primarily Mel Wang, because he opened my mind in every possible way, because Cunningham to me was the closest thing to Balanchine in so many ways, and he was also a visual artist. And he was a Buddhist.
The idea of sort of cross-pollinating yourself
Yes.
was not something unfamiliar to you.
No, and the thing was, he did so many things like that, and I thought, well, I guess I can do that then. And he used me and challenged. His work was so challenging and so hard. Oh my God, talk about feeling stuck in rush hour in Grand Central. It was like, he was the auditioner too, because he'd give you 32 counts and that was it, once. Oh, wow. And it was like,
it was sink or swim.
Yes, and I danced a 12-hour piece with him. I danced on these 13-foot ramps in the Cathedral St. John the Divine. I danced at, I don't know if it was DTW or whatever the other place was downtown then, but he had a main piece on the main stage, and I was dancing in an adjacent room by myself, a whole piece, during that piece.
Oh, wow. So very innovative, ahead of his time.
Way ahead of his time. We danced at La Mama. Everything was a challenge, Everything he offered was a challenge, a super challenge. So he was great. And by that time I was in New York. I started working with Mel my freshman year at Purchase. I was 18. And which was against the law, but we would drive into New York after an unbelievable, at that time their schedule was insane. I've never had a schedule like that, but thank God, because it really helped me now.
Yes, exactly.
So we would drive in at night and work in New York and then drive back. And
so you're going around the clock.
Yes, but then we always lived, New York is like half an hour away, So, and all the teachers were still working in New York. So it was.
So everybody was going back and forth.
Yeah, and the intention of purchase was as an extension of New York, but
Right.
not outside of the city, so you could live in this beautiful country, because nature was always very, very important to me.
I know this is probably around the same period that the AIDS crisis happened. And I know it had a huge effect, certainly in the dance world, but it had a huge effect on you personally. Can you kind of segue into that and how that affected you?
So in coming into New York, this was much previous to that. This was the 70s. So when I got to New York on the regular, that's when I studied with David Howard regularly, first at Harkin's house and then in his space, and Maggie Black. Maggie Black changed everything for, between, well, it was the three heavy hitters were David and Finest and Maggie, and those were my teachers.
And they were kind of the cult figures of New York at the time. Yes, everybody went there.
And so I did that whole thing. And also with Larry Rhodes, and I mean, these were seminally super important people to me. And Dancing with Melvin in New York by the time I got out of Purchase. And we had little pickup companies that we did in between stuff and all kinds of stuff. But I was also involved heavily in the downtown scene, because I was what they call a swing, so I could take the uptown classes and work in the avant work downtown.
You could kind of make your own schedule.
Yeah, and by then I was creating my own work. I started creating my own work at Purchase and continued to do that. So I was producing myself, and in Soho, in the museums there, and I worked a lot in a lot of galleries, and so that was very suitable for what I was up to. And we had a band. The people at Purchase were very similar to me. Like, I was so lost after the death of my sister, I never thought I would find anybody, but the people they took into Purchase at the time you had to have one thing you did very well, and a secondary art form that you did as well. So you met all these people who did all these multiple things. So we stayed together afterwards, and we created a band that was picked up. We made some of the first music videos, which is where I gained the skill to be able to do the video.
Did you feel, I mean, having sort of that you were at home around people that were artists, did you feel that that was like the place that you wanted to be, that you had sort of come into your own?
I never thought it would end. I mean, my family was like that. And so I went from my family directly into this crazy scene at Purchase, directly into the New York scene, and everybody I was privileged to be around, all of the teachers and mentors were the top of the top, and everybody around me who was working was the top of the top.
It was sort of a golden time in New York at those days.
And also my parents had very high, you had to be a really good person, a hardworking person, and really dedicated, and they pulled no punches. So it was, the whole thing was life to me, So we created this band, and we were picked up by Sony because we were one of the first people to make a music video. And so this was like this, I knew all the people then in the fashion world and the club scene, and doing my own work and studying with all the heavy hitters. And Joseph Papp asked me to come in for his Project Search to do a piece the public was sponsoring. So they would just pick people out. I did theater work as well.
I love how everyone was so like interconnected. It wasn't like a, this or that, but everybody really, it was like so collaborative.
Very, and we talked earlier about Robert Joffrey, his maverick nature and what he brought into the picture was at a certain level of artistry. It was extremely important that you knew all of these things that were going on and the history of things, and you could put your money where your mouth was. You had to be able to really be able to do it, and there were so many skilled people around, but it was also very, very community oriented. It wasn't about money, it wasn't about any of that. It's just about the goods. If you had the goods, and people would help you, and that was a brilliant thing. And then AIDS. So at the time, there was no reason to believe that if you were very good at making this innovative work, that your audience, the audience was incredibly erudite, or really knew what was happening, and if you were good, you would work.
Yeah, you were sort of on a trajectory that was going to just keep going.
But a logical one.
Yes.
It was logical, you know. Now I don't know what happened, but like if you went to City Ballet for all of those premieres, the audience was, they would be like, she was off tonight, and they knew every step, they knew every person, they held you to account, they were there with expectations.
Very funny you said that, yeah, it's true.
The work was finished in the gaze of the audience. Between the audience and the performer, the work became finished and was exalted. So with AIDS, not only did I lose all of my collaborators, but the audience, the critics, and Reagan was coming in. Also, if you're taking care of a friend and you're trying to get bury somebody else, you know, to the one funeral home that would bury people, while you're not thinking about your next piece or like what you're trying to
Just change your whole dynamics of your head.
plus the confusion, you didn't know what was happening. And I was one of the first women in an AIDS thing, because truth is, my husband, you know, my partner at the time was a bisexual intravenous drug using hustler. There, I said it. So when AIDS came out, we're standing there reading about it. I think it was called Grid or Gird, or I forget. We looked at each other and we said, we're goners. We're goners. So I was in the...
Because no one really knew.
Nobody knew. And I was the only woman in this Cornell University thing to find out what kind of panic was going to set in the U.S. And so that was huge, and there was no going back from it. There was no... What went with that was the point of view, from my perspective. The whole point of view, whole artistic point of view went away. A whole way of studying went away. A whole level of how to make stuff went away. The city began being sold out. Nobody could battle for stuff anymore. Everybody's losing their lofts. This is my 8th space after being like chased around by realtors for my whole life, you know, since my 20s. So it's a daunting story. That, to this day, I mean, Light Body really came as a result of that in 100%, because in an effort to try to bring these talented people all around me somewhere, and from what the legacy of the people who remained knew, who were there at that specific moment, that's became very important to me. But that's when I dropped everything and I said to my mother, well, I'm moving to the mountains. I didn't even know how to drive a car. I was from New York City where I didn't need to drive a car.
Nobody drives in New York.
Yeah. I moved to the mountains. She was like, what? You're doing what? You know, because it didn't make any sense.
You probably needed space and time and to be not in the city.
So I went to the mountains and I had a beautiful space there. And now it's a big spot. And like Cat Spawn was there, and Mount Tremper, everything that's like big now, I was there. And Meredith Monk was like right on the other side of the mountain, and I loved, and Aiko and Como they were around the creek bed from me. I saw them make the work in the creek.
Oh, how interesting.
Baby had just been born, and Meredith used to give shows in this little like barn that she had there I taught Graham to dairy farmers, women. That was amazing. One of the most amazing experiences of my life. They loved it. They were so regal and so beautiful.
Wow,
I didn't know what to do, so I taught. But most of the time I spent alone in this studio, just redoing everything, rethinking everything, redoing everything. I threw out all the work that preceded it, and I had done a lot of work, and good work.
Let's talk a little bit about your choreography, because I know even when you choreograph now, and you've been choreographing for a long time, but you do everything. You do the choreography, of course, but I know you pull music from your past, you do the costumes, you do sculptures, there are many, now you're doing film. I mean, there's like so many layers. It's kind of amazing. You're like sort of the one-woman show.
Well, I used to be a community. And, you know, it's like the difference between a mountain and an escarpment. You know, escarpment was a plateau, and then when everything fell around it, it just becomes this, it seems to be a peak. but I know from whence I have been made. So it's something that I'm compelled to do, to keep that vibrancy alive for the next people who come, so that, because you're not looking at something when you look at the work, you're entering a vibrational field, and our senses know it better, especially if you get that right brain going with the left brain out. Your senses know it and can then respond to it. So, my mother was a designer as well. She made all our clothes, so I learned all of that. So
it just feels normal to you to work like that.
it does. I don't know, normal is a word, but I do it anyway. The thing is, I'm now that I'm a they, I know I'm a they, and this feminine voice, I became very distressed at the loss of it. I think there's something extremely important about the feminine voice. I think that it's different. We have a different thing to say and a different way to say it. And I love collaborating, I do. And I've worked with beautiful designers and something, but they always try to neaten my work or even it out or clean it up.
And your work is so clean. What I've seen, it's like so clean.
But there is also an à la main nature to it. Like everything is sort of craft project, because I want you to be able to think about how you might do it, what you might add to it. I want you to remember childhood, the basics of things, the quotidian, the most beautiful things that are the most basic, instead of all this external stuff. Right. But I think that's a feminine voice. So I just thought, what will happen if I just try to see my voice all the way through? So that's sort of how it got. I didn't, how did I know? I don't know.
How you feel like everything goes together for you. It's not
Yes.
like another voice. It's your
Right.
voice all the way through.
Right. Or the voice, I don't know
The
if
voice.
it belongs
Your
to
voice
me. But
says, I should say.
Yeah.
You're a they.
my they, yeah.
You're a they.
That's it, yeah. So I think I also wanted to create a model so that I anticipate, not that I ever wanted to make anything big with moving parts, but it's just getting bigger and bigger. So I just thought I need a model so that when people come to help me and have a vision, they can see something, at least a jumping off point. So there isn't a lot of chatter, but more just the looking and the touching, And plus the dancers are involved in every aspect of it. They make things. They do all of that as well. And that's in very big part.
So you see yourself as kind of an orchestrator.
I do. And I just do what I always did, and how it was in a family of 10, that you just do that, So it's sort of, that's the way that goes,
So you've obviously had like lots of layers that have made you over the years.
Yeah.
And what do you think in this fun of time that we're in right now, which has been so difficult this past year for sure, but what do you think the dance world will become in the future, or should become in the future, or what is the future going to look like, do you think?
Right.
Or should it look like?
Well, I mean, I don't work from idea. I work from inspiration, which is kind of if I were to define that, it's kind of a risky place. Like I wait till this thing happens and then I follow it. I also have synesthesia.
What?
I have synesthesia, just to add to the general mix of crazy. So maybe a color field will emerge and then I kind of follow that. So because my thinking mind is really small and doesn't fulfill art at all, I just use that to follow the structure of music theory in order to create. That's very important to me. That's why it looks clean, because of the structure. So if we're asking about where it's going or whatever, my thinking mind has all kinds of things to say, but I don't think that's accurate to art or art making, for me anyway.
Oh, that's great.
And that I have to wait, and waiting is uncomfortable until it clicks, and then it'll move from there. It's like I never create steps before I am in front of the dancers, because I feel like it's not fair. I want to be on an even playing field with the dancers, because I am a dancer and I want to have that same nervous sensation. And also I find that I edit myself if I do that. Like I'll make something good or nice, and Kazuga used to say, wherever that takes you, don't do something to get out of it. You have to do the inevitable thing to get out of it, whether you like it or not. You know, that fulfills the structure. So I try to go there. What I'm hoping happens is that we take our time more. I hope that we really go towards making things in a deeper way, that we really take some stock, that that art begins to lead rather than sort of the razzle-dazzle of Instagram and the externals of it.
Razzle-dazzle, I love that.
It's really unfulfilling for me, and also because nature plays such a huge role in everything that I do. So the ecology, I hope that we begin to pay attention. We're in this place with this virus because of the ecology of our natural world. And I think that Mother Nature is giving us this opportunity to refocus.
That's it. Maybe get it right or get it better.
Yeah, deepen and joy, and like to move out of the mechanics of it. I mean, make no mistake, I'm a technical hard ass. Anybody who works with me knows. Like,
True. Yeah, you always have like projections and film and many elements in your performances.
but I mean, just in terms of the technique of the dancer, I'm very, very strong with that. But because that's what you can lean on in order to be free. So, you know, but this whole template of deepening and finding the joy in it, an artistic process, the one that I learned, was privileged to learn and live, you know, that's what I really hope comes out of this. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I think that thank you for your beautiful thoughts and for your beautiful discussion.
Oh,
it's
great.
Great to look into your life and your past and your little bit of your inspiration and your passions. And
Thank
it's
you.
been really lovely speaking with you.
You're
I
terrific,
appreciate
Cameron.
it.
Thank you for all of this, and you know, your beautiful legacy at the Joffrey is really, again, we talk about so important. Thank you. Yeah.